Amita, are you doing it, or who's doing the honors? Oh, you're doing up here. Okay, that makes sense. Please. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. May I reveal your singing career? You won't be embarrassed? Hua used to sing opera. Now you're embarrassed. You have so many talents.
It's gone.
Gone, mine too. Totally gone. Okay. So, the last night, is that correct? Yeah. That's a perception. Perceptions create value or feeling, or so the feeling of the last night is different than the feeling of the first night. So I always say this: if you had a good retreat, you think, "Oh, so sad." If you had a bad retreat, yeah, I'm out of here. I say that every time, but it's true, isn't it? So, but what is that which is not a perception, which is not a value judgment, which is not a feeling, and yet makes everything possible? And that's awareness or consciousness or presence. And so the spiritual life is a kind of reversal from consumer life, or a life of distraction. Because the life of distraction is always going outwards into sense experience and trying to maximize pleasure, minimize pain, and being always in that foreground realm. And then our life is actually making the background, the space, the silence, consciousness itself, that's the priority rather than the foreground. So it's a real reversal, isn't it? And that's, I think, the principle of renunciation. Rather than shaving your head and putting on a brown outfit like mine. It's helpful. It can be helpful. So that, to me, is a kind of basic principle of the spiritual life. And it's not to me particularly Buddhist. Yeah, I see it throughout spiritual literature, in the perennial philosophy, in various kinds of lay teachers. I see it in Sufism, in Advaita Vedanta, in mystic Christianity, in so many ways. And to me, that's the kind of basic understanding of it, that you cannot find the unconditioned in the conditioned, in the way we Buddhists talk. You cannot find that which is permanent in the impermanent. So we don't say, I would disagree, as I was saying earlier in one of the talks, that if we say everything is impermanent, that to me would be missing out the most crucial part of the Buddhist enlightenment, was there is the unconditioned and so on. So the idea then of emphasizing impermanence is don't go there for your spiritual values. Go there for worldly things. The only question that was written down was a question on how much should I meditate, and kind of apportioning would, like a half-hour walking and half-hour sitting be good. And it's much more than doing your aerobic exercises. It's got to be bigger than that. It can't be just this kind of, okay, I do my aerobics, then I'll get my meditation in, then I can go to Starbucks. And then I can start living my life. It's obviously a more serious consideration, and it is a lifestyle consideration. And so I was kind of just glossing over my own life last night, and to some extent, lay people cannot be monks, but they can reflect on what the Buddha's recommendations were for right living. What would be helpful if one were to take the spiritual life profoundly and seriously. And we get so many reminders about death, so many about the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well are you spending your time? I am of the nature to age, I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken, I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die, I have not gone beyond dying. Sing that, you chant that a lot. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, but will become separated from me. And all the time, this sense of the fragility of birth, and yet also the importance of birth. That this is a chance, this is a really, really good chance to understand something very, very profound. How's that, Joy? Is that a bit better? Yeah, sorry. So when someone asks me, should I do a half-hour meditation, that's kind of, the point is like inner vigilance all the time. And many suggestions of this spiritual life constantly. So that would mean, like Tarek and I were talking again, and talking about like serious Islamic practice that is not all the violence that we hear about, but like seriously spiritual. 5 times a day, whatever, you stop and you pray. And as Tarek was saying, the life revolves around the prayer rather than the prayer being shoved in for half an hour when you have time. It's like an interesting take on it. It's not about dogma, right? That is more like the seriousness of awakening to the way things are. So that's the more kind of more profound question, because it's about lifestyle, right living, right action, right speech, right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. So how can you carve out a lifestyle where it's more and more, you're more and more skillful at awakening to the way things are, 24/7, and that's difficult. People are busy, but to kind of just assess how much of life is trivial pursuits and distraction, and how much of life is the escape from boredom, maybe, because we don't, as we were talking about that, this society does not tolerate boredom. We will not have boredom. No way. We will go to the next scroll, or the next and the next, and boredom has a really good place, because when you feel bored and you have not an object to go to, if you bear witness to that, which is a kind of restlessness, you bear witness to that, the restlessness ceases and you come home. But our culture, it's they want eyeballs on their websites, right? Is that the way that the language talks? So it's a very anti-spiritual culture, not that it's against religion per se, but its structure is to distraction. So to live a serious spiritual life, one has to address that whole cultural problem we have. And we're not counterculture. Or maybe we are, I don't know. Like I don't consider myself counterculture. I just consider myself a different culture. Like I'm not against, I don't go on the streets, saying, down with Amazon, or something like that, because we use Amazon. It's not like against something, it's more like a value system towards non-distraction, and in all the ways that happens. How can one introduce that into one's life? And then also the kind of urgency. We were always trained with a sense of urgency. Death is around the corner. You never know. And it wasn't like to be afraid of death, but more to value life and what's important in life when you consider that death is imminent. You don't know. So it wasn't morbid in that way. It was just more like a pointing to value. What is the value of human birth and how to use that well? And all of us, I think, when we see people who are aging, who haven't dealt with their inner negativity, maybe they're quite cynical, or maybe they're kind of anxious, or very impatient with others, and they haven't developed the barami of deep love and deep kindness and deep generosity, and they start to get into the territory where they no longer have any choice. The habits become more powerful than their possibility of reflection, and that's a bit scary or sad, right? This easy, and you see, well, you could say, you don't have to be so cynical, but in a sense, they have to, because there's been no training, there's been no inner resources. So just those values that we all encourage each other to be like, really good sila, good moral values, good honest living, without deceits, huge generosity, just like really deep generosity in sharing whatever we have and that we can share, and a kind of honesty about one's ego tendencies, not judgment, but kind of awakening to that. So when we have sila and dana in place, and a good moral living, then we've got a foundation as we age, or life throws its terrible curves at us, because I think we've all figured out by now that life isn't designed for my desires. Have you seen that? Isn't that amazing? That my life is not that important to the design of the universe. That my sense of justice is not the world's sense of justice. That my sense of fairness is not, etc., etc. As my friend once said to me, life sucks. And as much as we would like to paint it that if we do everything right, that somehow it'll all come together and we'll float off with the lamb and the lion. But no, I mean, we all face misunderstandings and blame, and that's part of the package. It's a given. And yet, we do everything we can to be fair, to be just, to be moral, and not to blame. So we put our bit into our societies, which is wholesome. But you don't know what comes back to, and we make mistakes. Who of us haven't made mistakes? Just part of. I mean, I can't imagine being a parent. They don't give you a manual, do they? I think I said that at Aya's place. Yeah. Well, here's your manual, and you just do A, B, C, and everything will be fine. You don't know? I mean, I can't imagine. You've never had one, right? And then, and you've got your own stuff to deal with, and you're growing. So, big challenges. So how could one not make mistakes? And So just constantly reinforcing the value system that the Buddha encouraged in us creates a foundation of I would say confidence and self-worth, all those things. We had a Cambodian man and his family were very, very supportive of Chithurst and Amaravati for many, many years, Tan Nam. And he was a jeweler in Phnom Penh. And just the kind of how many people died at the hands of the Pol Pot regime. It was, these horrible stories. And he came back and started a convenience store, I think. Worked like a Trojan. And then his wife had some serious mental health problems, and then there was a divorce in the family. It's just one thing after another. And he was like the Rock of Gibraltar. He had faith, and he did dana. He would just come, and he would offer. He would take precepts. He would do a lot of chanting, and go back into the terrible complexity of his culture, of his family, and all of that. And it was so admirable. He didn't have any fancy meditation practice or clever techniques for breathing. He just had deep, deep faith and goodness, and a deep faith in dana and that whole faith structure that was a part of his culture. That was very, very, very inspiring. He actually took, I think, Lompa Samedo to Cambodia. I think they actually went, yeah. And then one of the nuns in Amaravati, she's Cambodian background, and I think she saw her family killed in front of her. Something really horrific. And I think she had one child or two, but she went to she a refugee in the States. And I've told this story many times, but I think she was in Minnesota, computers, maybe, I'm not sure. But she had so much hatred for the Pol, you know what I'm talking about? So much hatred for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge and all that she would visualize one of, I don't know who, a soldier or whatever, maybe the one that did the killing in front of her. She would visualize like she would have a razor and she would be slicing this person up into small, painful, extremely painful bits. That was her practice. Not good. But understandable. And so at some point, she realized, I'm killing myself. And she started to do metta bhavana, and sincerely metta bhavana, and slowly she got over that. Then when the Khmer Rouge were no longer in power and she could go back, I think she started up a women's refuge. And then she went up to one of the areas where the Khmer Rouge weren't active, but that element was there, and she went up to apologize for hating them. And it was sincere. It wasn't like, wow. I mean, that's saintly. It's absolutely saintly. And she's quite a happy woman, quite radiant, beautiful, beautiful woman. And so there's someone that didn't have the faith in that strong sense that Tan Nam did because of the injury, but she had a Buddhist background of goodness begets goodness, and she got out of it. Very, very admirable. So these are the, stories where people had real problems. So sometimes our problems in a wealthy society, we have a joke, we say it's a first world problem. And that's very true. How much do we want? What's actually possible as a human being? And to not fall into the traps of thinking that somehow life can be in some way, always perfect, because that's an insult to the third world. When you think about poverty in I keep saying South Sudan, but or horror in Ukraine or the horror in Gaza, like when if I complain about that the Marmite is empty or something, I'm kidding, obviously, but then you put, well, wait a minute, what would they think? What would they say about me complaining about whatever? Is that really a wise way to consider my life? Which isn't to say that we don't and we try to make a better thing, but this kind of, sometimes we'll get people coming to the monastery who have a kind of sense of entitlement, and we think, they think like we're a kind of mix of a retreat center and a Buddhist B&B. And I kind of, and they think our practice is inferior. Oh, really? Yeah, okay, get out. Like they'll have some technique which they'll come, and they said that's the real technique, and they'll kind of snooty-nosed. One guy came into the kitchen and said, in the afternoon, can you do me a Caesar salad? What? So, oh, that's first. But yeah, the kind of like, and I think it's a really, really sobering reflection to see how, like, I've often thought how good the baby boomers have had it. I mean, it's like everything just falls in for the baby boomers, and then death. Like they have the big pensions, and it's kind of quite amazing. So if you're a baby boomer, I'm a baby boomer, it's probably the best that any generation have ever had it and will ever had it. Really, in terms of like, I never had to go to war, and I lived in like wealthy societies and education and healthcare and all that. So do I have the right to complain? You can complain, but somehow to kind of get, kind of to get a vision of the unconditioned, and not get caught in the endless disappointments of conventional life, because it's disappointing. So you probably heard that line that Luang Por Tat used to have, that, oh, joy at last to know there's no happiness in this world. So what? What did you say? Oh, joy at last to know there's no happiness in this world? I love those paradoxes. And he was a really happy man, but his happiness didn't come from worldly things. He came from inner enlightenment. Ajahn Chah was a very, very happy man. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's so happy. He's got no right to be happy. And yet he's ebullient. I was on the committee that organized his first trip to New Zealand way back, so I got kind of close to him. I wasn't central in the committee, but I was part of the peripheral. And it was just so beautiful to be with him. And yet when you look at the horror of what his culture's gone through, and the amount of refugees he's had to receive in Dharamsala, so to be happy almost seems like frivolous. But no, he's because he's ebullient, and because of his compassion. And for me, that I in that visit to New Zealand, he gave a wonderful talk, as he does in his avuncular way, and he said that compassion is the method, and I often talk about that. And to me, that was the first time I got that. Yeah, that's the method. It's not the goal. It's what you do rather than what you get. And so those ideas of awareness combined with love and openness are very, very significant for my own spiritual life. So in terms of the question about how much, it's more like put all those inputs are important, like reflections about the abandonment of greed, hatred, and delusion, the cultivation of the wholesome and the good. So where does meditation come in? For me, a meditation is a strengthening and amplification of the capacity to sustain continued awakened knowing. Huh? And there's something about meditation that is particularly unique in that. Now, we sometimes say, well, yeah, I meditate when I chop the veggies. Yeah, you could be mindful, but what is it about meditation when it's cultivated? It gets you in touch with the vibratory silence of the background. It gets you in touch with the unresolved material that might be coming into consciousness. It helps you to deal with the desire for distraction, right? So it does many, many things that are particularly unique to just stopping. It needn't be our meditation, someone that does prayer or mantra or whatever. And if you think about it, anything which you're going to get good at, you have to do it a lot. Play a cello 45 minutes a day, and what will it sound like? Cats screaming. Do woodwork 45 minutes a day. You won't make a shelf. Etc., etc., etc. Cook. Cook only 45 minutes a day. Yeah, you'll boil the eggs, right? You'll never bake bread or whatever. So anything of value, you just have to do it a lot. So we sometimes use the word quality time. Ajahn Sonas uses the word quantity time. It's just the nature of actually training. And so people say, my life is very, very busy. Then, yeah, okay, then fair enough, you have that. But to start to look at the hours one has in a day and try to carve out a kind of significant time is I think, important in the spiritual life. Of course, I'm a professional, so if you want to meditate. If you don't want to meditate. So my life has been morning and evening puja every day, and then that just it's in kind of like my DNA, and that every monk does that. They're just like, why would you not? But there is like, if you can get past the hump of the meditation being hard work, that's very helpful, because then you want to sit. Yeah, you want to. It's like you want to brush your teeth, right? And you want to have your Arabika Javasattva in the morning, and you want to meditate. You want to go to the silence of the mind. You want to see what's happening, what's the material coming up, and I find that the I don't have issues as much as inquiries, I would say. So if I do the inquiry, I think this was the least popular of the inquiries. This retreat was, is presence ever absent? But I think it's the coolest. But never mind. So I don't take it personally. I find that really powerful. I find it very, very powerful. So then I'll do that in the morning, and I'm not just thinking, is presence ever absent? I don't know. It's not that. It's like, whang, it gets you right into the silence of the background. So then if I do that quite diligently as a kind of both inquiry and as an awakening possibility, say, then that's going to have a powerful effect for the whole day, obviously. And then that reflection, which is profound for me, keeps coming up, and then I reinforce it in the mornings. So it's not just about kind of having a nice little sit down, but actually getting going in your inner world the reflections of transcendence, for me, the reflections of transcendence, but they might be the reflections of being careful with wrong speech, or the reflections on the annoyance you are working with, or reflections on the anxiety you're having with this situation. And then there's a kind of inner vigilance going on around how your inner world works. So then all of life, of course, is meditative. It is. But not just as a cliche like, yeah, lifting the clock is meditation. It's mindfulness. But for me, meditation is a more contemplative thing. It's not just inner vigilance. It's inner inquiry and inner direction and, in that kind of a way, which is different than analysis. I'm just kind of, because analysis usually is oftentimes just thinking about yourself too much. It doesn't matter. But this isn't analysis. It's getting beyond thinking about yourself, really, to the background. So in terms of lifestyle, if you find a shrine helpful, if you find chanting helpful, think about that. If you have a space in your home which is dedicated to meditation, if you have a candle, a Buddha image, and you always go there, and you always bow, and you do some preliminary chant, that becomes holy, in a sense that it has all the associations of the spiritual life, of morality, of generosity, of your own inner inquiry, and that's very helpful. Symbology can be very helpful. Routines are very helpful. So my life is very routine in some way. Yeah, very much. Like it's just Groundhog Day every day. It's the same thing, and I do it better. It really is. And it's interesting. You'd think monastic life, oh, come on, where's the excitement? But it's actually a very interesting life because it's meaningful and it's not distracting, and it's answering the kind of inner call that I think we all have. So I'm not saying that you should be monastics, and I actually haven't got any more space. But I'm saying the monastic is a Devaduta. A Devaduta is a heavenly messenger. Little wings I've got here. And you all know this. The heavenly messengers in Buddhism are old age, sickness, death, and someone aspiring to Nibbana. And old age, sickness, death are the heavenly messengers. They're not just the bad joke of being born. Oh, it's all about old age, sickness, and death. That's what Buddhism's about. No. It's that when we consider those things, then hopefully an urgency comes up, like for the Buddha. He sees that. He sees an old person, a sick person, and he sees death. And he says, is there something else? Is there otherness? Is that all it's about? And he goes off. And through 6 years of struggle, he reaches enlightenment. And that's kind of the real allegory of the Buddha's renunciation, how it actually happened. People say, well, he didn't see a sick person in India until he was 35? Come on, he must have had the flu. So, on a kind of functional reality kind of thing, no. But there was something about his life which was protected, or he was just distracted into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or whatever he was doing in his own particular way. And then something clicked. And for all of us, that something clicks. No, there has to be more. And then, you mean, that'll happen to me too? And death, that happens to you too. It becomes, you see a friend die or something like that. It's a real shock, a real awakening. And then there's the search. So I'm I'm really grateful that you have the patience to listen to me. And many of you have heard my same stories for 20 years, so thank you for laughing. But it is, I do enjoy actually teaching with or talking with friends that I've been practicing for a long time. There's something that is very endearing and very encouraging, and it's nice not to have to lay out fundamentals. You know, if I had to do that every time, I'd find, and you know, obviously that has to be done sometime. So I do wish that you could use all the trials and tribulations of your life in a way which is liberating. And just one little plug for Tisarana. We have a Katina ceremony on the 27th of October. If anyone would like to join, that'll be the first time we use the new hall. Please do come if you're in the territory. Okay, I'll leave that for your reflection.
Dhamma kataya sadukarang dadamase
Sadhu. I just said sadhu to myself.